Hi, this is Rachel Undercover. We are back with Dr. Tracey Shors, and she's going to tell the rest of her story.
And tell us how this might differ from neurofeedback or EMDR.
Well, it's pretty different in the sense, as I mentioned, it's more of a brain fitness program. It's a way, like I kind of mentioned earlier when we were talking, it's a way of keeping your brain fit for life. So I like to think of it. So for example, let me give you an example. We tested these. We provided it to these teachers during the pandemic, and it was during the summer, the first summer before they were going to have to go back to school. And so there was lots of, you can imagine, as you know, we all know, anxiety that first summer. You know, a lot of people couldn't leave their house and they didn't know if they would go back to school, et cetera, et cetera. But teachers in particular were very, very much affected, and K through 12. And what we found was that the women it was mostly women who didn't take this training, they became more and more anxious as the summer went on and more worried, had more traumatic stress in their life. But the women who were doing this program just once a week live on Zoom, and once on a video if they wanted to watch it, didn't have that increase. So, what that data suggests is that these programs help you not only recover from what has already happened, but they kind of prevent some of these symptoms from arising. Because we're all going to experience trauma in the future. We don't necessarily know what it is or when it will happen, but most likely we're going to have something that's going to feel traumatic.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, and so we kind of have to prepare our brain. So I think of this more as a way, again, not only of recovering from something that happened in the past, but also kind of learning how to respond to something that will happen either now or in the future.
I mean, because, and there are a lot of us that have suppressed their memories, and then they get them later in life.
Yeah, exactly. I think what people tell me, and I guess I even experienced, but what people tell me that after they do this program, they just feel less distracted. They just feel more present, more calm, and less likely to ruminate. The biggest finding we have, every single study, they don't ruminate so much about the past. And, I don't know why that actually happens. I do have I'm doing a brain imaging study now to kind of figure that out. But it feels like it's just a learning how to discriminate between the past and the present, and making a choice in a way about, where you're going to focus your attention. We did do a study also, because sometimes people say to me, well, we know meditation is good for us, and we know exercise is good for us. So, what's the big deal? And, I get that. But we did do a study showing that if you do both of those together, one after the other, it's better than doing either one alone. So these were women who had trauma, primarily sexual trauma, and one group only meditated twice a week for 30 minutes. Another group only exercised aerobically twice a week for 30 minutes. And then another group did them together, did the MAP training. And then another group did nothing. And by far, the ones who had less depression and less rumination and greater self-esteem were those who did both of those activities, back to back.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's super helpful, because some people, I know, especially in Western culture, we are not many of us are not ready to meditate.
I know. I know I'm trying to make it, more accessible and I think also by knowing a little bit about how these activities change our brain, it kind of helps people know like, oh, okay, it's I could try this. And I mean, I've been meditating now for 15 years and I still find it difficult. I mean, it never gets easy. But I do know that it's kind of helps me. And I feel like afterwards, particularly if I do the meditation followed by the aerobic exercise, I just feel better. And, I try to get that memory of how I feel afterwards, like recognize it. Like, oh, this is how I feel now. And I could feel like this if I just would make myself do this activity. 1 hour. It's like 1 hour and you can really change how you feel. So, yeah. And the meditation too, like people think, oh, I don't have to become a monk and like move to a cave and sit in silence for hours on end. It's just 30 minutes, 20 minutes sitting, 10 minutes slow walking. So it's something you can do mostly. It just takes a little effort.
Oh, most definitely. Tell us about your current study with women on college campuses.
Yeah, so I kind of hinted at that. So I have a study right now. One of the things that I've been interested in and actually saddened by is how prevalent sexual violence is on college campuses. I think most people are aware of that, but it's just so sad and so problematic. These women come to school, they're so excited to go to college, and then some experience happens and it can just change everything. And so I've been working with the victims assistance group, at Rutgers, and for years now, really, on these studies. And most recently, we've been providing this MAP training program to women who've had these experiences. And then also what we're doing is scanning their brains. We have a new brain imaging machine that's state of the art, and it can kind of detect lots of different changes in the brain. And so one of the things that I'm interested in doing is uncovering kind of what is, like, not only what is it that happens in response to these kinds of traumas, but then what does the recovery process look like? What does it look like when people start to say, oh, I'm not ruminating so much, and I'm not thinking about the past as much, or feeling as much, my heart isn't racing every time I have a memory or something reminds me of what happened. So, so that's what I'm doing. It's going well, I think. One of the, I guess, sad parts of the story is that there's just so many women that want to do this. It's more than we can accommodate, really. And, this is true across college campuses across the country. And, so one of my goals would to make this program accessible to these populations of people who, maybe, like I said, don't have a lot of money to spend on therapy or even have the time or access to it. They could do something like this, yeah.
Most definitely. How do you think the community could better respond to sexual abuse?
I mean, the community, not necessarily college community, just generally us. Yeah. Like I mentioned, I do think that, the Me Too movement and all the kind of sister movements that went along with it really did help a lot. 5 years ago, when I was doing some of these other studies, it seemed like it was everywhere. Everyone was talking about it. It felt like there was a lot of incentive to kind of help people recover, and also just prevention. It's kind of died down a little bit lately, I feel like, and that's unfortunate. I still feel like people do know more than they did. They appreciate how prevalent it is, and it's a serious, problem. 1 in 3 women in the world will experience, sexual violence in their lifetime. That's not okay.
No, it's not.
No. And, getting that information out, but again, not only about stopping it, not only about the kind of legal aspects of it, we also have to focus on prevention, like just preventing it, and when it does happen, preventing some of these negative consequences.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. And I think, to begin with that, starting to acknowledge what consent is. And I think that is something that is not talked about enough. And I think Hollywood is, depending on where you're at, has actually started doing a pretty good job of at least opening that door.
Yeah, I agree. I was actually listening to one of your previous podcasts, and in one of them you were talking about consent. And I was thinking, that really is not talked about enough. Like, what is it? And particularly when you're young and you're in college or high school and, you've gone through puberty, and, that's when these experiences typically happen when women are young, and it's often their first sexual experience. Like, that's, the first sexual experience, period, is a monumental experience in your life. And then to have it be associated with, such violence is just not okay. And I just feel like if everyone kind of knew, like, what's at stake, not only like, what is consent, but, what is the possible consequences if you don't know what it is. And
yeah. Because shame is our worst enemy.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us struggle with shame so much, and it's debilitating. It is like carrying around an extra 50, 100 pounds with you everywhere you go.
I know. I have one of my really good friends was really traumatized as a young child by her dad's friend. And then she was I don't even want to talk about it, really. It's so bad. And, it still hangs over her head, and she's in her 60s. Still, all these years later. And, at the time, she didn't really tell anybody. And even when there's kind of gang rape happened, no one would believe her, or they thought it was her fault. And, it just infuriates me. And it changed her life completely. And she's living with it today. Still trying to find help.
Oh, yeah. I know I had a professor, and her brother was sexually abused as a kid. He doesn't leave the house today.
Ugh.
And, and it's not just women that are experiencing this. Men are too.
I know.
And they don't have an outlet for it.
They're probably even less likely to talk about it, too.
Oh, yeah. And most of them can't.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I've been surprised, since I've been working on this, how many, just generally how many people have had experiences, particularly when they were young. And a lot of them didn't even necessarily know at the time that it was.
Oh, yeah. They have to rephrase the questions. I know Allender does a lot of rephrasing of questions to just help men identify whether or not they've been sexually abused as children.
Yeah.
And it's heart-wrenching. And I have dated so many guys that have been sexually abused.
Wow.
And how much they have struggled.
Yeah.
And they don't have words, and they don't know how to deal with it.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about just sex differences in general in these responses to trauma, and that is one of the kind of confounds, is that men are often less likely to talk about it. They're less likely to seek help. I'm sure that men are more likely to engage in, suicidal activities. It's a problem, and it's too bad in a way that you can't stop it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I wish we could. I don't know how that's ever going to happen, but we at least have to take care of people who've already, have already been traumatized by it.
Most definitely. Has there been any improvement?
I think there is improvement. I do, yeah. In my lifetime, I would say for sure, just talking about it more. There's more information. As I mentioned earlier, there's much more research being done on women and trauma, which were kind of ignored for a long time. So I do think there's been a lot of progress, and I even think there's more openness about different types of therapies that could help, different types of practices that maybe weren't traditionally accepted, in research circles and academic circles as being helpful. So, I think the internet and some of these apps too that emerged during the pandemic. So now, for example, teletherapy, so people can get therapy online through Zoom. That's actually great, because a lot of people didn't even have the access to go see a therapist or find one or could afford it. So I do think there's been progress. I do. And I also think knowledge is power. So I think the more people know about how trauma affects the brain, that's my concern, the more likely they will be to do something about it now.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
What are some of the best advice you could give to victims out there?
First of all, you're not alone. Trauma is common, and I don't know if that's not necessarily good, but it can be to some degree comforting to know that you're not alone, and as a result, there is help to be had. You kind of have to seek it out. It's not necessarily going to be easy. I would also say that some of these approaches do require some effort. And I think sometimes people want like an easy fix, take a pill or, I don't know, take some mushrooms or whatever it is and somehow be cured. And I'm not sure the evidence suggests that's going to help, or that's even possible at this stage, or have a brain implant of some sort. So I think kind of recognizing that this is a process, that healing is a process. It takes time. Just like if you had a back injury or a big cut on your leg, those take time to heal. And similarly, our brain and our responses to trauma, it just takes time. But it can and it will heal over time.
Most definitely. What do you do for self-care?
I do MAP training, actually. I mean, one of the reasons I am so compelled to get it out in the world is because it really does help me too.
Yeah.
I kind of live it. I don't do it as much as I probably should. I kind of have to do it sometimes because I'm doing these studies and various things. So sometimes I kind of have to do it, which ends up being good for me. Actually, a couple of years ago, I did have a back injury, and I couldn't do a lot of things. It was difficult, sitting a long time. It was difficult, definitely, to exercise, and I did notice a difference. I felt like I was really kind of down, a little bit depressed, really, and so I do it for myself. I mean, I do recognize that people do have problems that can prevent them sometimes from doing a lot of these activities. But if you kind of just do what you can do, it helps, even if it's less than what you might wish you could do. The thing that I also do is I just kind of make myself do it. You know, like sometimes if I wake up, I'm like, oh, I don't really feel that good. Really not that optimistic about the future. Or I'm thinking about something I did that I'm really regretting. And I'm just like really in a bad headspace. I'm like, okay, Tracey, you need to do at least some exercise. And even better, some meditation followed by exercise. And then when I do that, I'm really thankful I made myself do it.
No, I think most people can agree when you do, well, especially just with exercise. If they do their exercise, they feel better.
Yeah, it's like a miracle medicine, but just getting yourself over the hump of doing it is the hard part. And the same thing with meditation. You know, meditation is actually even kind of harder at getting over that hump. But, you know, once you sit down and like 5 minutes in, you're like, yeah, this is what I needed. A little silence.
Most definitely. Okay, is there anything else you'd like to add that we did not ask?
Can't really think of anything. I've covered a lot. I mean, for people that are interested, I do have this book, Everyday Trauma. It kind of covers a little bit of all what we talked about. It's a little bit psychology, kind of a lot neuroscience stuff, and MAP training I talk about, and other therapies that help people with trauma. I just made some videos of my MAP Train My Brain program, so I'm hoping to get those out in the next month or so people can do them if they're so inclined. It's on my website called maptrainmybrain.com. There's also a description of the program on my website, and so you can just do it on your own too. You know, I kind of like doing programs that are either with other people or online, but other people don't. You know, they rather just kind of do their own thing, and so that's obviously perfectly fine. And so, I just encourage people to get out there and find out what's available, kind of challenge yourself to learn something new, even if you think you might not like it or you think it's too hard. Like, you know, just get out there and engage your brain in the world.
Most definitely. Learning keeps you young.
It does. It keeps us alive.
Well, that too. All right. I think that's it. Thank you for coming on our show. All right, guys. You can follow us on your favorite social media platform. Follow us on your favorite podcast platform. And we also have a YouTube channel. And if you have any questions, always reach out to rachelinrecovery.com. And I will have Dr. Tracey Shors' information in her bio at the end of this episode that you can read through. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel.